Hi lovelies, welcome back to the channel today. So we're going about the quick detailed drafting and also the cutting of this beautiful gown you see right here on the screen. So a detailed analysis on this dress is all about the stylish keyhole neckline, which connects all the way from the neckline into the half length or the waistline, and it also has a slit in front which has this stylish bold designs as well, which is the combination on the sleeve as well. You can see the beautiful and the wonderful combination right there. Like, I enjoyed all the process involved from the drafting to the cutting and the sewing of this gown, honestly. So it just sounds like something you're interested in learning. Please continue watching. Don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. Without much ado, let's dive right into what we have for today. So for this particular style of dress, these are the materials that are needed. Your estee, you also need your lining of any color that is related to your fabric, but you can use black. So this is a high quality Ankara high target. As you can see, it also has a label. So it's 6 yards in total. And this blue border satin I have right here is for my combination, and I have my ruler, chalk and pattern paper. So behind the camera, I already drafted out a half scale basic bodice, which I'm pretty sure that most of us are familiar with, but in case you're not familiar with this, I'll be dropping a link in the description box that will take you to the tutorial on how to do all of that. So these lines I have right here are for my chest line, my bust points, my under bust, and also my half length. My neck width is 3 inches and my neck depth is 6.5 inches. I just created a block neckline, which from here I'll now create my round neckline. I also got my nipple to nipple point of 4 inches right here, and also my shoulder, like, is properly detailed on that tutorial on how to draft your house scale basic bodies. So you can see how I already created my round neckline. So the next thing now is for me to label or differentiate my center front and my side front. The center front is usually the smaller part on your bustier, and the side front is usually the bigger part. So from my dart line, which is my nipple to nipple line, towards the center front, I mark half of an inch away from my dart line, and towards the side front, I mark 1 inch away from my dart line. So this line, I'm extending it now to the underbust line, which is the line labeled UB, and that's my underbust. So you can see what I did right so far. Then next I'll come to my bust point line, which is the line labeled BP. So I came down by half an inch from there. So you can see the way I'm reconnecting this line to meet this line on my underbust. So just do exactly what I'm doing here. But if you're familiar with this, just continue watching. We are doing this together. So this is it now for my waist dart and my underbust dart. So the next, I measured out my neck depth, which is 6.5 inches, and that my neckline, I'll be extending it into a straight line. So for this upper side, from this my 6 inches neckline upward is going to be my yoke, and now this is my new neck depth. Okay, I'll be working right here. Okay, just continue watching so you don't get confused. Now I'm also marking my nipple to nipple point of 4 inches on that point, which is my new neck depth right here. So I believe everything is clear to you here. Please don't be confused at all. Okay, so from that my nipple line, that's my nipple to nipple, I now marked 3/4 of an inch away from there. Just watch what I'm doing closely. Just 3/4 of an inch away from that line. So you can see that 3/4 of an inch is like very close to my earlier created neck depth, right? So at the both sides, I marked 3/4 of an inch away from that my dart line. So now I'm going to make sure I have 1 inch space from my neck width. So you can see, I'll make sure I have 1 inch space away from my neck width. I marked right there. Then from that my neckline of 6 inches, I marked 4 inches upward, or you can do 4.5 inches. Now from this 3/4 of an inch, I moved away from my dart line. I'm going to connect it all the way into that 4.5 inches I marked upward. So ensure that as you are connecting this, it's exactly on that 1 inch, or if it sees the 1 inch, no problem, but it shouldn't be very close to your neck width. There should be this space. So you can see I had to retake the measurements. So there should be this at least 1 inch space to 1.25 inch space, so that it won't be difficult for you while you are sewing. Okay, then you now go ahead and create this neckline and connect that other side into that 4 inches I marked upward. I hope it's not confusing at all. Okay, I'm trying my best to explain this properly. All right, So after getting our keyhole now, the next thing is to get our dart for our upper bustier. So from my dart line as well, I'm marking half of an inch away from my dart line. So I'm going to reconnect this into my bust point line. Okay, so I marked half of an inch away. So I'm using my pen so I can be able to differentiate this and not confuse you at all. So now I'm going to reconnect this after coming up by half an inch from my bust line. I'll now reconnect this at both sides. Okay, so this one now is for my darts, and that other 3/4 of an inch I marked away from my dart line is for me to be able to create my keyhole neckline. All right, so that is basically it. And the next thing I'm going to do is to start placing my dart intake. So when I measured out the half an inch I marked away from my darts, I replaced it on this line which I told you will be my neck depth, and that is 1 inch. So the next I move to my chest line. So because I already have the quarter of my bust circumference there on my chest line, I now added 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance. I added extra 1/4 of an inch for my turning up allowance. I've always done this, right? So I'm going to move over to my waistline, divide my waist circumference by 4. I'll mark what I have right there, and I'll replace my dart. I measured it out here is 1.5 inches. I'll replace it. So I'm going to also add 1.5 inches extra for my sewing allowance before 1/4 of an inch for my turning up allowance. I didn't do it here, but it was later I realized I didn't add it, so I did that while I was cutting out all my fabric. Okay, so from that this line now, okay, on that point where I replaced my 1 inch for my dart, I'll now recreate a new armhole into my chest line. I hope you can see what I've done so far. So for this particular bustier, I'm not going to be creating a side dart or a classic dart. I don't want it really too pointy, so it's going to be like this. Okay, so the next I'm going to create this curve, this curve in front of the dress. So from this from this other leg of my keyhole neckline that is close to my neck width, so that's where I'm going to start creating this for. So if you want to use your free hand to do this, it's totally fine, but if you want to take the measurements, it's totally fine as well. It shouldn't be so wide. So for that chest line, I had 2 inches on the bust point line. It was 1 inch on the under bust line. I mean the spaces, that space I'm calculating right there. So on the waistline it was 3/4 of an inch, and on the under bust line it was about 1 inch. So you can also just use your free hand and just do this. So I firstly used my pen to get the curve first before I use my marker to highlight this. So if you make it so tiny, it's not going to come out nice, but just make it moderate. Okay, so see the way I connected is now the way from down my keyhole neckline on my neck depth, and I stopped exactly on the half length. I hope it's not confusing at all. So now I'm cutting it out from the base and the sides alone. I'm not touching the armhole yet. Okay, so the only part of the armhole I'll be cutting out is this other second armhole I created. Then I'll just cut it straight. I'm not touching the initial armhole. Okay, so if you watch properly on the shoulder part of this dress, it kind of has an ankara joined to the bridal satin part that has a combination. So to just achieve this from the armhole, you can just mark 1.5 inches to 2 inches inside your shoulder. So initially I did 1.5 inches, but I felt like it was too small. I now added extra half of an inch. So altogether here I have 2 inches from the armhole inside or inward. Okay, so I'm using my pen now for this part, and I'm just going to label it the ankara shoulder part. All right, so this part will be cut out separately, so we'll do all the cutting together, and I just made arrows to indicate the shoulder and also the part that will be going in for the shoulder and not the armhole part. So the next I'm going to do is to duplicate this, or to get another template for this from just the neck depth downward. So I'm just marking a straight line because this other part of my paper wasn't straight. I will place this other piece of pattern paper I have on top of that straight line. So from my neck depth, just pay proper attention. From my neck depth, I'm getting the line on the neck depth and the armhole part on that smaller armhole. I'm getting it for the side. Just watch what I'm doing, please. I'll get the sides. I'll get the base as well. So you see, and I also marked my darts, but I'll still have to recreate that. Okay, So what I have as my neck there was 6.5 inches. I'm trying to get my chest line, my bust points, and my under bust line, because I will need to recreate my darts. Okay, so now I'm extending these lines, and you can see they all align properly. So I'm going to recreate the darts that was already created. Okay, so now I got my nipple to nipple point of 4 inches, and I marked half of an inch away from my dart line, and the other side, which is the side front, 1 inch. I'm recreating my darts like the same way I recreated my darts for the first part of the half scale bodies we drafted. That's the same thing I'm doing here. So this is going to be the template of the part where we are going to cut through. Okay, because this style is a bit tricky, and you need to be very observant enough and be calculative, because it took me like the whole day to discover how all this was made and also drafted. So that is why I'm just taking my time to teach you all. So now you can see that I've cut the base, the side, the top part, and now the smaller part of the armhole. So right now, for this particular one that doesn't have the shoulder, that is where we'll now cut through on the darts that we've created so far. Okay, but for the other one that has the normal shoulder, the neckline, the keyhole, we are not touching the darts area. Okay, so I now move this aside. So the only part that will be cut out from here will be from this curve we have from our neckline to our waistline. So just watch exactly what I'm doing and how I'm cutting this. So I'll now slash it now from that neck depth. I'll cut out this triangle I have here, and now cut out the actual armhole. I'll cut out the neck width, the neckline. You can see now the shoulder part. So on that part where I labeled Ankara, that's the part where I marked with my pen, I will now cut it straight. So this other part now, the other body part here is not needed. I threw it away. So I'll now make use of this other body parts and now label it the center front and the side front. So I believe everything I did here is very clear. So at the end of the day, this is what it's going to look like. We know this part will be cut with our combination, our bridal satin, and this other part with Ankara. So I'll just place this aside. When we get to the cutting stage, we'll still do it together. Now we'll go ahead now to cut out for the back part of our dress. So I also did this by drafting a healthcare basic bodice as well. Everything is going to be the same. Attach the neckline. I'm not going to be having a separate yoke for this. The back will be together with the body part of the back. I'm not going to be having a yoke. So the only difference here is just going to be the zipper allowance and also the back neckline. Okay, so it's going to be together. So it's just the normal half scale basic bodies. The neck width here is 3 inches. The neck depth here I also used 3 inches as well. The nipple to nipple point is going to be the same thing. The waist, everything, just the dart and the zipper allowance and the back yoke is going to be different, and the back neckline, sorry. So I just don't want to confuse you all at all. So from my nipple to nipple point, I moved away by half an inch at both sides of my nipple point so that I'll be able to get my dart. So I replaced my darts, marked my 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance. Then from the zipper part, I moved up by half of an inch to avoid zipper bulge at the back of our zipper. That is how simple it is. Make sure you place all your darts, and that is basically it. Now go ahead and cut out every other side. So for my zipper allowance, I marked 3/4 of an inch. Normally I mark half of an inch, but because I'm using 1/4 of an inch to turn this up, I marked 3/4 of an inch. So the next is to draft out for the lower part or the skirt part of our gown. So the full length of my gown I'm working with is 62 inches. I'll subtract 17 inches, which is the half length from it. So the skirt part is going to be 45 inches long. So you can see what I have right here now. I've already gone ahead to cut out the quantity of fabric that will be enough for the skirt part, and now I'm going to start drafting. Remember, it's folded into two. From the top part, I marked 3/4 of an inch, and I'm rolling that into a straight line. So from there now, I'm going to be getting my hip length. So this person is quite tall, so for the hip length I use 9 inches instead of the normal 8 inches or 8.5 I use. So I'm using 9 inches for this particular client of mine. Then I'm now going to divide my waist circumference by 4. So whatever I have, I'm going to mark. But firstly, I forgot, first you have to mark at least 1 inch and quarter for our slit allowance. Slit, okay, for the slit we'll be having in front. So I now mark that now all the way from the top part of my fabric to the base, okay, and I'll roll that into a straight line. So now all the measurements I'll be imputing will be starting from this line and no longer from the edge of my folded fabric. So now I'm dividing the waist circumference I have by 4 and it's 8. I'm marking it from this line now, and I marked it on my waistline. And then for my hip circumference I divided it by 4, and what I had I also marked it right there. So I'm making a connection now, a curvy one from my waistline into my hip line. So that is basically it. And the next I'm going to do is to mark my dart. So my nipple to nipple point is 4 inches. I marked it right there. From that waistline I'll mark 5 inches, and that will be my dart line. I'll extend that line. Please, all these markings I'm doing is on the wrong side of my fabric and not on the right side, okay? So I'll extend that nipple to nipple point line into this 5 inches dart line. At both sides of this my nipple line I'll mark half of an inch away from there, and now create my waist dart for my skirt. So you can see that this other side of that for the lower part is facing upward, okay, and that for the upper part or the upper basic body is facing downward, okay. So I'll replace my dart here of 1 inch, and I'll reconnect it and make sure that it stops exactly on this my dart line of 5 inches. So you can see what I've done right here so far. So make sure you connect this properly, okay. So now I will now add 1.5 inches in allowance plus quarter of an inch for my turning up allowance, because I always stitch my fabric and my lining piece together. So when I must have done this, I'll now go ahead and also reconnect these two lines from my waistline into my hip line. So now we're done with the upper part. I'll move over to the length of this my skirt. So remember that I'm placing my tape from that waistline all the way. I'm going to be getting 45 inches, okay. So at that point it's 45 inches, and I have 2 inches extra, sorry, 2.5 inches extra, which is going to be the sewing allowance, okay. So I extended that 45 inches line because I'll be notching it so I don't make mistakes at the end of the day. I was trying to ensure my line is correct here, so that's why I had to check if it was up to 2.5 inches. So when I was done with all of that, I went back to my hip and I measured what I have from my hip length from that allowance into this line, which is my slit allowance. So whatever I had, I subtracted 1.5 inches from there. So now I'm marking 10.5 inches on the full length of my skirt. So that is it for the skirt part, and I'll simply go ahead and now extend this line from my hip line to meet the base of my skirt measurement, okay. Or you can connect it from the base upward or from upward to the base, whichever way that works for you. Just make sure that you connect this very, and please always work with your hip curve, okay. So that is basically it, and I'll just go ahead and connect them together, do it the right way. And on that actual length of my skirt, I'll make sure I notch it as well as earlier stated. So the next I'm going to do right now is to cut this from the sides. I'm not going to be cutting the base because I've already measured this out initially, okay. So on the actual length of 45 inches, I now went ahead to cut this out. So I'm going to keep the front part aside so that we can work for the back part. So for the back part, I also have my fabric folded into 2 right here, and I'm also going to place the front part of this my skirt on it. So you know that the back part always has a zipper allowance. So I'm just going to arrange the front part of my skirt on this second fabric, which is for my back part, and I'm going to cut out the top part there, the little excess I have, the sides, and also the base. I think they are the same because I measured it out before cutting it out, okay. So the base, I think, is also just very small difference with the front, and on the actual length I also notched it as well. So I extended my dart. I want to notch it so that I can reflect the back part before I go ahead and remove the front part. So now I'm coming down by half of an inch from the top part to slant this in the same way I did for the upper part of our gown, and then I will notch my dart. So what I'm going to do next is to mark this slit allowance of 1.25 inches. You can see what I'm doing right here. So I want it on the back part of my skirt, and I measured my that to make sure that it's also 4 inches. So now I'm marking 1.25 inches. Remember, 1/4 inch is always for my turning up allowance. So I extended that line slightly. So I want to give this a butt cuff so that our butt doesn't become flat when we wear our clothes. That's the essence of this butt cuff. So from your waistline, just move away by half of an inch, and from there you extend this line to this 5 inches line, then to 8 inches. I've always done this on my channel. If this one is so fast for you, please, I'll be also dropping that same link on how to achieve your butt curve in the description box. That's a tutorial. That one was not fast as this one right here. My subscribers by now should already get used to this butt curve, because it's a very nice effect when you wear your gown. Your butt doesn't look flat at the back. Okay, so that is it. I now cut this open. So I'll move over back again to the front part to work on the slit. So right here, you're going to determine how high you want your slit to be. But for me, from the actual length of my skirt or my gown, I marked 20 inches right here. I extended that line. Now from that slit line, from the slit line, not from the folded edge of my fabric, I now moved away by 1.5 inches. Now I'm going to slightly connect this into that 20 inches I moved upward by, which is going to be for my slit length. I hope you're not confused at all. So when I must have now done that, I'll go ahead and cut this through. I hope you can see what I've done. So on that part where my slit length stops, I now notch this. You can just mark it a bit inside, okay, but it's going to stop exactly on that slit length. So I went ahead now to open this up. Now I have 2 pieces of this for the front, and I'll be using this stuff I cut out from this my Ankara piece as a template for my combination. I've gone ahead now to transfer all these stuffs I've cut out on my fabric. This is for the yoke part that is connecting all the way into the waistline. You can see that I added half of an inch all the way around. You can see for the center front, for the side front, all the sides I had to do this, and this is for the Ankara part. You can see on that part where I added half of an inch. All the parts at the base as well, I added half of an inch. So I'm going to be notching the parts that will be joining with this bridal satin side. Okay, so for the yoke part is a bridal satin, for that other side is an Ankara. So this is for my center front. At the top part I added half of an inch, at the sides half of an inch, at the base 3/4 of an inch, and I also cut out on my stay and lining as well. This is for the back part. For the base I added 3/4 of an inch. That's the only part where I added my my joining allowance. Okay, so this is for the skirt parts. Now I've also gone ahead to cut out on my lining piece. So for that other stuff from that slit I told you will be my template or my guide, I used it to cut out for the bridal satin for my combination, as you can see right here, and I added half of an inch at both sides. You can see it what I have so far. So for my lining piece for my skirt, I made sure that the length of my lining stops on the actual length of my skirt of 45 inches. Okay, so that by the time I stitch, there is a way I normally do my turn up for my lining. So you see I'll be having 2 inches extra. So that's basically it. In the second part of the tutorial, we'll be going about the sewing of all of these drafted pieces. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate. I'll see you all in the next one. Have a lovely time ahead of you all. Bye.